In 1940, Woody Guthrie released a beloved American folk song. This land is your land, this land is my land. This land was made for you and me. Apart from its place in history as a second national anthem, it can also serve as an example of the primary and universal nature of melody. I grew up going to bluegrass festivals where I would bring my guitar and play songs with strangers from our common repertoire. It was in one of these jam sessions that I heard something I thought was strange. Oh, little darling, oh, how I love you, how I love you, none can tell. In your heart, you love another, little darling, pal of mine. Did Woody steal the song? Little Darling Pal of Mine was written by the Carter family in 1924. It was a song I'd never heard before, but already knew because the melody was exactly the same as This Land. One of the old-timers, when I remarked, did Woody steal the song, said, well, have you heard When the World's on Fire? Oh, my loving brother, when the world's on fire, don't you want God's bosom to be your pillow? I'll be over in the Rock of Ages cleft for me. Woody may have taken his melody from the Carter family, but it turns out the Carter family took their melody from an even older song, a black spiritual called Oh My Loving Brother, also known as When the World's on Fire. Traditional folk music is able to serve as the musical mirror of the world, as Nietzsche puts it, through its diffusion among all peoples, as its melodies inspire new creations out of itself in lyric and in poetry. Though it might not seem like it, this primordial melodic phenomenon is an issue that touches art, appropriation, ownership, and human psychology, though it's seen today perfectly presented in a surprising place, hip-hop music. Folk music is built on oral traditions, as songs are passed down through generations, between communities, and across cultures, lyrics get altered to accurately reflect specific tastes and mythos of each group, though the melodies often remain the same. In our particular technological era of sound recordings, it would be easy to assume that this folk process would disappear as oral traditions have disappeared, but that would be incorrect. It's 1972 at a house party in the Bronx, New York. A DJ by the name of Kool Herc is showing off his merry-go-round technique on his turntable. By what must have seemed like magic, Herc would find sections on funk and soul records where all the instruments would drop out except for the drums. He would take these sections called breakbeats and loop them over and over again to get the crowd moving. Heidi will give an example now. While Herc was doing this, his MC, Coke LaRock, would give shout-outs to people in the audience, often in rhyming verse. This was the birth of sampling, a new way forward in the folk process. Because he was, in essence, creating new compositions over the existing audio recordings. While hip-hop music might have been invented on turntables, as music technology began to advance, producers and creators began to experiment. The MPC, similar to the one Heidi is using here, is able to record sections of songs, scramble them, and layer them on top of one another, creating what Adrian Young has referred to as a mosaic of sound. A bunch of tiles of different songs pieced together to create something often even more beautiful. Let's give an example now. We have used recordings from the Ituri province of the Congo, so you'll hear some singing, an Appalachian public domain recording of a pianist, and a recording of a chain gang in Tennessee. You'll hear the hammer sound as the percussion. And then I added some banjo of my own for good measure. In my youth, I amassed a large collection of board games, but over time, my parents began to complain about missing pieces, playing cards, and occasionally an entire game board. What they soon realized is that I've been taking bits of dozens of games and combining them with my Legos, my G.I. Joes, and parts of our nativity scene to create new games. Where does this phenomena originate, and what is it in us that carries it forward even into a technological era? I believe it is a natural function of the human psyche. It manifests in our mythologies by way of our greatest artist. As such, a mythology is to serve 4 functions. The first function gives a scientific image of the world. The second gives laws to a society. And the third teaches how to live a life under any circumstance. These first 3 vary greatly over time and between cultures, but the fourth is more universal. It refers to a realm or a reality beyond the senses that transcends language or knowledge. Examples of this include the Tao, Brahma, and Buddhism, but also includes elements of quantum theory. The eminent Erwin Schrödinger likened it to a silkworm. I'll quote, "Giving expression to thought through the observable medium of words is like the work of a silkworm. In being made into silk, the material achieves its value, but in the light of day, it stiffens. It becomes something alien, no longer malleable." Quantum physicist. Lyric is able to image matters of cosmology, sociology, and pedagogy. But what can we say about what we can't express with words? Lyric and melody, or lyric and metaphor, can come close, but it's a matter that music and melody can handle with ease. According to Heinrich Zimmer, the best things can't be told, and the second best are misunderstood. The second best referring, of course, to lyric and poetry reaching out beyond the world of information available to the senses, seeking to name what can't be named. As music has become a commodity, the idea of building on the musical motifs of the past has become a legal issue. And even if it's not strictly a legal issue, there are also ethical issues related to things like cultural appropriation. Now, appropriation occurs when minority culture is used and exploited for profit by the majority. Ideally, its effects can be blunted by simply crediting and lifting up the musical pioneers and innovators who deserve it. Modern music will occasionally take this approach, as a long list of credited songwriters on many popular songs can attest. But I do see a growing list of particularly litigious parties that I think could spell disaster for the folk process. This list includes the notorious Fogerty versus Fantasy case, where John Fogerty was accused of stealing a musical idea from himself. Run Through the Jungle was written by John Fogerty, but owned by his old record label, Fantasy, who asserted that Fogerty's new song, The Old Man Down the Road, was just Run Through the Jungle with different words. Fogerty ultimately prevailed in the end, but other more recent defendants have been less fortunate. And a process that by its own nature is meant to connect us has become more of an issue of capital and private property. I'd like to tell you all a myth of the Ituri province of the Congo to illustrate my feelings on the subject. A young boy was walking through the forest when he heard a song so beautiful that he followed the sound to see who was singing. And he discovered a bird, the bird of the most beautiful song in the forest. He asked the bird to come home with him, And when he got home, he asked his father to allow the bird to join them at their meal. Now, the father was annoyed to have to give food to a mere bird, but reluctantly agreed, and the bird was fed, sent on its way. The next day, as the boy was walking through the forest, again he heard the song. But this time when he brought the bird home, his father was more annoyed than before. Their food was too precious to share, he thought. So he sent the boy off on an errand, and while the boy was gone, the father took the bird out into the forest and killed it. And with the death of the bird, the song of the forest died as well. And with the death of the song, the man died. How can we avoid killing the song and thus killing who we are? This is my greatest passion. I'm the music producer for a show on PBS called Reconnecting Roots. The show examines art and technology through the lens of American history. And I get to rewrite old songs in the American canon to tell stories of today. My playground for the show is the vast repository of the public domain. It's a treasure trove of free use oddities and beauty that includes everything from the films of Buster Keaton that went on to inspire Orson Welles and Wes Anderson, all the way to the likeness and illustrations of Winnie the Pooh himself. And I think a fantastic example of the power of the public domain is the recent horror adaptation of Winnie the Pooh called Blood and Honey. This is a real thing. Winnie the Pooh is now in the public domain. I'll quote Wendell Berry. "We clasp the hands of those who go before us, and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms, and the larger circle of lovers, whose hands are joined in a dance. In the larger circle of all creatures, passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance, to a music so vast and subtle that no ear hears it except in fragments." Art thrives through rebirths and cross-pollinations. The folk process itself allows us to build on the ideas of the past and add another mask to the existing melodies of the world. Music, when not seen as a means to profit or conserve, but as an intentional heresy of collaboration and innovation, can present itself as the great psalm about the brotherhood of suffering between everything alive. I would like to close now with one of the so-called lost verses of Woody Guthrie's "This Land Is Your Land" with a small lyrical change of our own. Ready? Mm-hmm. There was a high wall that tried to stop me. A sign was painted that said private property, but on the backside it didn't say nothing. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. It's only borrowed, even if it's stolen, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Thank you all.